Hey everybody, so this is Greg with Gonzo Labs. So I have a fuel pump hanger here, one of mine. This was purchased by a customer, installed in the car, and there were some issues that was going on with it. Um, they went back and forth, did a lot of repairs on things. A lot of things were disassembled on this. A lot of things were done wrong on this. And I'm just wanting to go over and cover this. This hanger was actually sold to somebody else who sent it to me to do a rebuild, and I wanted to go over some of the things that were wrong here. First off, the connections here for the fuel pump, they have been soldered and they have been shrink wrapped. And this substance that we see here that's coming out, that is actually the glue. A lot of heat shrink tubing has this internal glue that sort of seals the heat shrink when you heat it up. The problem is that heat shrink is not fuel safe. So what you're seeing here is actually the hot glue is dissolving, and it will end up completely dissolving this heat shrink and end up inside the fuel, and that will clog up the fuel filter, that will clog up the fuel pump, it will completely damage it, and eventually this stuff will just completely dissolve away. Raychem 25 is the only heat shrink that is fuel submersible safe. This stuff is not. This could have caused all sorts of problems, clogging up filters, could have destroyed a fuel pump if it actually got sucked up in the fuel pump. The other problem I ran across with this is that the fuel hose that's on here, this isn't the fuel hose that I ship with these. I'm not sure exactly what this is. This looks like PCV hose. The fuel hose I ship is Gates submersible fuel hose. It is made and designed specifically to be used inside of a fuel tank. This stuff here is rock hard. I can't even bend this fuel line. It is hard as a rock. I haven't disassembled this fuel hanger at all, but I can just imagine what the inside of this thing looks like. I'm going to guess this fuel hose is actually, looking at it, you can see right here how it's bulged down. I'm going to assume this fuel hose is actually shrunk inside, so it's not going to have the same diameter that it's supposed to have, because the fuel, basically what it is the gasoline itself oxidizes this rubber, and it shrinks it to the point where it starts cracking and falling apart because it gets so hard. So yeah, not fuel safe. Do not just use any regular hose. It has to be fuel submersible safe. If you need more hose, get a hold of me. I have replacement here I can get you. The other thing I noticed is that the fuel studs on this were completely taken apart. And when they were reattached, they were over torqued. First off, I see here the power line has an additional washer in there, and I'm pretty sure that, yeah, it's not even tight. The other ones I can tell have been over tight, and the reason I can tell this is that the white Teflon washer that's in there when they're originally installed are the same size as those stainless steel washers that are there. And you can see that Teflon washer has been crushed out past, and it's been crushed out past on a lot of them. And when you crush that out, that actually prevents it from sealing. There's a specific torque that you need to basically torque these down to, and it's not like rock solid. I mean, we're not putting like 5 pounds of torque on these. You're basically tightening them down just to the point that it seals. The instructions sort of go over this too. But this is going to cause all sorts of problems here. I'm going to tear this thing down even farther and see what the conditions of the O-rings are. I also noticed that this has a copper O-ring on both sides. I don't ship with copper O-rings. The interior, originally the first batch I sent out used Teflon washers on both sides because the Teflon's safe. Considering the color of this copper, I'm not even sure if it's actual copper or not. It may just be an aluminum washer. I'll pull that apart and take a look. But I ship with Teflon washers because Teflon washers are fuel safe. I've actually swapped out for the exterior one to using a different type of washer because the Teflon washers with the bulkheads were kind of crushing it sometimes. The new washers I use are a nitrile. It's a steel washer with a nitrile inner that helps seal it and also stops the bulkhead from moving. And I can also tell that bulkhead is not even facing the right direction. It should be facing that way. So But yeah, example of these are the kind of problems that will occur when things are not done right. None of this should be. This should all be crimp connections. I'm not even sure about that connector there. That seems kind of loose. I'm assuming that is a nylon, but it looks like one of those heat shrink ones. I don't know if that has adhesive in it. I'm gonna break this down farther, and I'll give you a few updates here once I got this all apart and figure out more on it. So I got this fuel head all broken down. I can definitely see there has been a lot of issues with these, with the fuel studs. So first off, the O-rings, these copper O-rings I pulled out, they actually are copper. They're pretty soft, so they should have held up okay. I can't say how well they're going to actually seal though, but I didn't find any issues with it. One thing I did note is that the bulkhead fitting, when I pulled it apart, was extremely too tight. It was so tight to the point that the locking nut there had actually been deformed, and that was digging into one of the copper O-rings, probably from over tighten and using a non-aluminum AN wrench. These aluminum fittings, you really need to use an AN wrench on it, not some, just a standard open-end box wrench. I had to use a box wrench to get this apart because it was damaging my my AN wrenches. But you can see in there where it's been over tightened and was actually crushing into the stainless steel hat itself. As far as the studs themselves, which one was it? So only one of the studs that I pulled out, actually everything was still intact. That was one of the sending unit studs there. I don't remember if that was the low fuel or the fuel sending one. Here's the other sending unit one here. You can see that center, if it'll focus, that center spacer there is HDPE. It's high density polyethylene. That is actually what stops the stud from grounding as it goes through the hat. And that there has been crushed. You can see it's completely deformed there. Can't say that's going to cause the sending unit to ground out to the hat. It could have. Unfortunately, there's no way to actually tell. These were loose when I got it, so I couldn't actually install this into my tank and actually pressure test it, see if it was holding pressure or not. Nor could, and since they were already loose, I couldn't really do a continuity test on it to see if they're grounding out. But that could have been a certain cause to what was causing it. And these studs had been removed prior. They were not in the original configuration that I had sent them out in, and that's why I mark those hats with that security, because that allows me to tell if somebody has removed these studs or not. Because when I ship these out, they're all tested and they're in all perfect working condition. These studs here are the studs for the fuel pump itself. The power, well, it's the power and ground studs going in. The one power wire going in for the fuel pump, and then the other is the ground stud. That ground stud can be used for either the fuel sending unit or the fuel hat. It doesn't really matter. The reason it's done that way is that the original fuel sending unit, the level sender grounds comes up and actually connects to one of the studs. But unfortunately, the way I had to design it, the wire coming off that stock level sensor is not long enough to reach that ground stud. So that's why I say to ground it to here. It does not matter where it's grounded, the fuel pump or level sender, because if you follow those two grounds coming off of the stock connector, both of those grounds ground to the same location on the body of the car. So there is no difference between grounding to the hat and grounding to the actual connector or wire coming in. It just gives you two separate grounding points. Technically, you could ground both of them to the friggin' hat and it's going to do the same thing. They're both going to the same grounding point on the car. They're both the same gauge wire. As far as the studs themselves, so as I said, these are the power and the ground stud going through. All the O-rings are completely destroyed. They are flat as anything. They should not be this way. These will only be flat like this if those grounding studs have been massively over-torqued. And I can also tell that because these Teflon washers here, You may be able to see it, but it's cupped. And it's cupped because the bolt has been over-torqued, so that it causes the Teflon washer to roll out. And rolling out like that pushes that O-ring and flattens it out. These O-rings are designed to fit into the tapered holes that are there. That's what actually seals it. But if you over-torque it, then what happens is that Teflon washer pushes in on that O-ring and pushes it out and flattens it out and squishes it completely. And all 4 of those O-rings that I pulled out are like that. They're completely flat and completely destroyed. Also, one of the HD spacers that I pulled out was also completely destroyed and chewed up. The entire inside of it is just completely gone. These are threaded. They're not just stick on. You have to actually thread these on. The instructions tell you that. And that is what seals the gasoline from leaching up through the actual threaded part of the stud, because a threaded stud has to be sealed at the threads itself, not just on both ends. It will still leach out. So I'm going to go through now, and I'm going to get this fuel hat reconfigured as I do with all my fuel hats, rebuild it completely stock, and I'll be sending this back out to the client after I fully tested it. Okay, so I got the hanger all rebuilt here. At the top here, you'll see this is what's called a sealed bonding washer. I guess these are aluminum washers, but it has a nitrile inside in it. I have some spare ones around here somewhere. Where are they? Up here in the kit. Yeah, so they look like these here. So the sealing surface of this does a lot better on these hats than the Teflon one does, because the bulkhead has a lip on it. And just like with these Teflon washers here, if this gets torqued down too much, it'll actually curl the edges of the Teflon washer up. These bonded sealing washers won't do this. And it's only an issue on this side because of the lip on the bulkhead when you try to fit it down. The good thing about the sealing bonded washers is that it also, once you tighten it down, it locks that in place, whereas the Teflon washers still left it so it could rotate some, which could be problematic, and it could possibly loosen itself up. So Teflon washer on the inside there, that seals that out. And as for the studs here, so all the studs are redone. Had to use all new Teflon washers and the HDP inserts. I just didn't trust the ones that are, and of course all new O-rings for everything. I just got to put the tamper-proof stuff on there again, let that dry out. When it was sent to me, the wiring, it was missing the wiring for the level sensor. I'm just assuming it came off, or they took it off when the original person took their fuel level sending unit off of this one here. So I added those back in because the new owner didn't have any of this. And this is specific. This is PTFE Teflon wire. This is specific for being in tank fuel. The normal nylon stuff and PVC coated wires do not hold up in fuel. You have to have the Teflon wire. And then power and ground. Replace these because the ones that were on this pump here, one, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that is not PTFE wire there. That looks like regular PVC wire. That there is my original wire because I can see the Raychem heat shrink on it, which is what I use for the in-tanks. So, but just another point out for a comparison also, let me take one of these. So this is an original washer next to one of the Teflon washers, and you can see, I mean, it's been crushed down really bad. Let me do side by side here on the phone. Yeah, it's been crushed down really bad. It's almost, I'd probably say it's about a third smaller now than the original ones. So yeah, definitely over torqued, and that would have caused a lot of issues with the fuel hat possibly leaching fuel out. And if it was, and especially with that one being over tightened the way it was, to the fact that the HDP spacer in there had been destroyed, and that was on the yellow wire. I'm pretty sure. No, actually, I don't remember. I don't remember if it was the level sender or the low fuel light. But that definitely could have caused it to ground out and cause issues with the level sender not working because both sending units are based off of grounding signals. So, but I'll go ahead and get this finished up. This will get boxed up and sent out to the client in the morning.